What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with hopefully a very brief introduction. I went on Serbian Corner, which is housed by DNVR Nuggets specifically, to talk with Miroslav Shuk, an OG listener of the podcast, good friend of the pod. Follow him on Twitter at Miroslav Shuk. That's at MIROSLAVCUK. He hosts Serbian Corner over at DNVR Nuggets. You can follow them on Twitter at Serbian Corner, spelled exactly as it sounds, just in case you can't spell Serbian. Serbian Corner, CORNER. And so we got into Western Conference tiers. He came up with Western Conference tiers. I reacted to them. So we basically bounced around the entire Western Conference. Figured it'd be an episode everyone would enjoy. So I'm going to put it up. Before we get started, there's the usual reminders. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. Tell people about us. Rate, review, Apple, Spotify. Help us juice up the ratings. Like, let's get the 500 ratings on Apple. So if you haven't done so, go to Apple, rate, review us, even if you don't use Apple Podcasts, to help juice those numbers. Tell people about us. That's a great way to help out the show as well. And before we actually get into the podcast, just wanted to mention the Josh Giddey allegations, which cropped up like basically around Thanksgiving. He's being accused of having an inappropriate relationship with an underage person. The NBA is investigating it. He commented when he was asked about it before Oklahoma City played Philadelphia. Mark Daigneault essentially said, the head coach of the Thunder, essentially said that they were comfortable with what they knew having him play, and that it wasn't kind of even in a question. I believe the organization clarified that it was per the league's guidelines, where the commissioner can step in during an impending investigation and suspend a player or have him away from the team. I don't think the team actually has that power. And if they could theoretically do it, but it would open them up to litigation and due process with the players union. These are very serious allegations. I hope the team knows something we don't, which is why Daigneault used the language he did, and that it wasn't strictly about, we're going letter of the law here per the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. It's just serious. And the whole thing just sucks because you're talking about the severity of the allegations, and then you have people sleuthing and essentially doxing what could be an underage minor and finding out where they go to high school, where they live, knowing that they're not in Oklahoma. And I don't want to talk about names. I don't want to talk about where they live because I just feel weird putting it out there. I'm this adult talking about a potential minor or someone in high school. And it's just, the situation just blows. And you hope it's not true. The allegations didn't come from the person herself, but having a video, having people on social media talk about it, I hope that you have to take it seriously. I'm not saying don't take it seriously. You don't want to believe something like this, but at the same time, if it did happen, you want to know so that the appropriate action can be taken. At the very least, you have to wonder, like, what type of situation did he put himself in that would open up his team and himself to this scrutiny? So you can't be happy about that. And even people are going to get into what actually is the age of consent in certain states, what it is in Oklahoma. Look, my whole reaction would be that I don't care if they were 16. If you're a 21-year-old hanging out with a 16-year-old, like, that's not okay. Like, that still just wouldn't be okay. I don't care if it's like technically legal. So we need to let it play out to see what happens. But they're serious allegations, and the lack of information here, and then just given the uncertainty of the source, where it's just sort of we don't have a concrete accuser at the moment. I'm not saying that the league needs to take it any less seriously. I would argue they need to take it incredibly seriously, like all these things. Just don't be surprised when the outcome maybe is not what you want it to be, because the NBA is a business, and they've kind of sent messages multiple times where Karl Malone was invited back to the All-Star game in Utah last year. And then we've seen how they've handled the Miles Bridges situation specifically, what went on with Josh Primo. You brace for the worst here. Again, that's the extent of what I feel comfortable commenting on. I didn't want to make sure that we glossed over it, but these are incredibly serious allegations. I don't know where to go beyond that. It's just like it's harrowing to find that out. And then even again, if we're talking about someone who is 16, that's still just no. And could the video have gone back years and they were 16? I don't like this. The information that's out there makes it seem like this person's very clearly still in high school. And so red flag for sure. Hopefully the league does its proper due diligence and reacts accordingly. I will say we don't need to add fuel to the fire by I know there are a lot of people that want to go. There's two ways to go about this. I'm like, well, innocent until proven guilty, and like, oh, these are just people these are just people trying to start shit. That's not an okay way to react. We also don't need to unnecessarily throw fuel on the fire. I saw a video going around of OKC fans giving him an ovation when he was introduced with the starters. I watched it. It did not. I mean, OKC fans stand on their feet to begin with. Like, that just happens. But the other thing is, I didn't notice any extra like pizzazz in the greetings of him. And as some other people point out, there's probably a vast majority, a lot of people in the arena might not have actually known what it even happened, just given the nature of these allegations, where it was the NBA eventually announced something, but it's kind of, originating on Twitter, and how many of those people are on Twitter right now following that. But even just the greeting didn't seem like it was any more. It just didn't seem different from any of the other intros that I've seen from OKC. Maybe it was, if you were there, maybe you saw an extended cut and I'm just wrong. I don't want to see him get a standing ovation either, to paint this as some, just adversity that he's the only one suffering from. Even it could turn out to be that way for all I know, which is why I even hate recording this intro, because of the lack of information. Let's monitor it. Let's see what happens. And the only thing I can say is hopefully the league, the Thunder, that everyone just involved takes this incredibly seriously, because these allegations are just, quite frankly, harrowing. Now, no natural segue as always, so I'm just going to be straight honest about it. Let's talk some basketball with Miroslav from DNVR Nuggets' Serbian corner.
Let me introduce my guest for today. I thought it would be a good idea to check up on the co-host of my favorite national NBA podcast that doesn't take themselves too seriously, called the HardwoodKnocks. He's also my favorite source of Twitter NBA jokes, but most importantly, a swell guy who is a very competent and hardworking NBA analyst and a writer at Bleacher Report. It's Dan Favale. Welcome back to the show, Dan.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Miroslav. And thank you so much as well for the super kind, way too kind intro.
So how are you doing these days?
I'm good. I was sick for a minute. I had a respiratory thing going on. I feel a lot better, as you could tell in my voice. So I'm ready to get into Western Conference tiers and these suddenly frustrating Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, so before we begin with actual tiers, I'm known for being overprotective of Nikola Jokic when he battles the refs, and we really haven't seen that for a while before those Cleveland and Detroit games. So please give me your outsider perspective on the situation. Is it as serious as Luka's tantrums, or maybe Luka being a bit calmer this season is actually being evened out by Nikola meltdowns here and there?
Yeah, it might be that, because Luka's been a lot quieter with the referees. And so maybe in the absence of Luka, anyone who's like involved in those little kerfuffles and disagreements and impassioned moments of complaints, it just stands out more and more frequently, because we don't have the Luka highlight, or, Luka and LeBron used to get us through with that. And I even feel like LeBron hasn't been falling behind plays as much doing that. So I will say Jokic is, I don't want to say a tough player to referee, but I think when you look at a lot of the stuff he does inside and how physical he can play, I could understand why fans would get frustrated, just because you watch Zion as a Pelicans fan. I think even as an impartial observer, and I'm just like, there are dudes just like running into him, and he's just built so big that you're not going to get a call. And it's just a little bit different with Jokic, because he's not built like the tank that Zion is, but he's so huge, and he does stuff on the inside that sometimes it looks like it doesn't rattle him, because a lot of his game can look discombobulated by design, is the way I would call it, because he's always under control, but those like flip shots and the second chance looks he gets around the basket, like those don't always look pretty or conventional. And I'm just wondering if it makes those tougher to referee. But he is one of the players where if you are a fan of a team, you can certainly call out his complaining, but when you watch him, and it does feel like, okay, over the most recent stretch, he's averaging like 7 free throws a game. And it's like, oh, it feels like he should be at 11 or 12. I could totally understand that sentiment.
Yeah, and actually, I think he needs to work on his acting, because it's not like he never flops while shooting the ball. He does, and it looks pretty bad, and he never gets a whistle on that. And when he is actually trying to hit it, he just hit it, and then he doesn't get an and one, because it went too easily to be awarded. Furthermore, I guess
he's got to start shooting a bunch of leaners and runners where he's like throwing his shoulder or his back body or leaning into the player and then firing up after cut. He needs to play he should just start playing like Jalen Brunson. Like he's just one of the guys who's able to do that because Nikola Jokic likes to operate from the in between too, and Brunson's one of the whizzes at just like once defenders leave their feet, he's not even trying to score. He's trying to like barrel into them and get a shot up that way. So maybe Jokic needs to start doing that.
We'll see. We'll see. I know he works a lot on his craft, so that might be actually the next step for him. I mean, we need to find a way for him to get better than what he's showing now, right? So, as I said, it's a fifth of the season in the books, and I believe it is time to react to some trends, and hopefully some of our reactions might not be a total and complete, early overreactions. I wanted to scan the Western Conference and put the teams into certain tiers. So these will be my tiers. I wanted to make that clear from the jump. So please don't aggregate them as Dan's late November hot takes.
Please do. That would be the best aggregation ever.
So let me pull out my presentation here. So the first tier I have here is called should be in the Eastern Conference considering how bad they are tier. So this tier consists of 3 teams, and it's the Spurs, the Blazers, and the Jazz. Feel free to call me out if you feel I'm too harsh on any of the mentioned teams, or if I should have added somebody else to this group.
The one thing I'll say is I feel like you were too unkind to the Eastern Conference because they might just be deeper and better when you look at the bottom of the West this year. I would agree that these 3 teams belong in this tier. None of them are trying to win, and I think Jazz fans kind of got a little bit of a wake up call with that because of how last season unfolded. The Spurs should be better than they are, man. They're not good, and growing pains, but I think it might be time they need like a floor general in there, kind of like how the Jazz had Mike Conley to stabilize things. And the Blazers, they belong here. I'm assuming the Grizzlies will be in your next tier up. I know they're going to get Ja back at some point, even Smart, but they're dealing with so many injuries that if you told me that the Blazers or the Jazz finish with a better record than the Grizzlies this season, I might not be shocked.
Yeah, and you actually guessed it because my next tier is called, well, I don't know what to think of them until they get at least some of their guys back tier. And of course, it's the Memphis
by themselves.
Grizzlies.
Yeah, that's fucking great. I love that.
There's no other team like that in the league right now. Is the hole they're in right now just too deep for them to even contend for the play-in place?
I guess not the play-in because I mean you just went through the 3 teams that you just went through: the Spurs, the Blazers, and the Jazz. None of those teams are going to make the play-in, and so now it's okay. So there's only 2 other teams that they kind of need to fall off. And I think you can look at some of these starts, and we'll obviously get into them as you go to your tiers. And it's all right. The Pelicans are a house of cards because of their health, but they're getting a lot better. The Rockets, they've had a really nice start to the season, but they have yet to win on the road. So is there something going on there? Could Alperen Şengün fade because he's never had this high usage for an entire year? And to actually answer your question, when you start going through it and you're looking for teams that could pull back, you might be able to identify one, but the Grizzlies need to leapfrog at least 2. And so I do believe that it is too late for them this season because Ja Morant's, we're only halfway through Ja Morant's suspension. Essentially, they're dealing with other injuries. And even when Ja comes back, that's not going to clear up their problems in the front court where it's their wing rotation is still reliant on, okay, Marcus Smart is going to play and guard up. His offense, when he's healthy, should get better with Ja just because he'll be shouldering a smaller load. But they're like, all right, we have Santi Aldama and we have David Roddy and we have Zaire Williams. There's just not a lot of like the 3-4 spot is a real issue for them next to Jaren Jackson Jr. And they have some answers where it's when Xavier Tillman is healthy, he could be fine. They have Biyombo on the roster now. But you can't, I know people have said the West isn't as good as they thought. And I honestly think it's because there are probably 11 teams in the West right now that could be super competitive and dangerous in the right context. And if you're the Grizzlies and you're 3-12 through the first 15, like if you get to, I mean, at this rate, if they're 7-18 by the time Ja comes back, that's super lucky to get there, given how they've played. How are you supposed to come back from that? So maybe they could get in the play-in, but their season to me is certainly over from a larger perspective where it's they're not gonna do anything real. It's not in the cards for them this season. And part of that is, look, They waited too long to play their best trade chips. I know Keith Parrish from Fast Break Breakfast has gone through this, but when you look at what they gave up to like just basically end up with Marcus Smart and like some of these youngsters that haven't panned out, it's not a great look.
Yeah, yeah, and it would be helpful for them if they would have a bunch of games against, Washington and Detroit, But I guess they can play some games against San Antonio in the future to boost up their wins. I just wanted to come back to the first tier about one team, and that's the San Antonio Spurs, who are coming to Denver tomorrow. They're on a, I believe, 11 games losing streak right now.
Yes.
And everybody in Denver is nervous because we don't want to be the team that will snap that losing streak. Yeah. How does it look to you that the experiment with Jeremy Sohan at the point guard and his game next to Victor W?
So I love Jeremy Sohan, but the experiment is not going well. And it's if you're gonna play him in the role that you want to play him, then you need someone else on the floor who can play off him, but also organize the offense too. And that's why him and Trey Jones really haven't played together a bunch this season because San Antonio doesn't have a lot of floor generals. And so could you get them more minutes together? Do you need to kind of dust off Devontae Graham more often than you have been? Invariably, though, when you do that, now you're looking at the five guys you want to play the most. And it's, okay, Wemby not going anywhere from the lineup. Devin Vassell, they're pretty invested in Jeremy Sohan. And it's, well, are these minutes coming? If you're throwing another guard on there, are you pulling Keldon Johnson? Are you pulling Zach Collins? Those are two guys who are really important. And so I don't know. I don't subscribe to the idea that the Spurs are doing more damage to Wemby or even Jeremy Sohan long term. There might be something to, if this isn't the role that Jeremy Sohan is going to play eventually, then maybe you should just get him out of it, because what's the point? Like, you've gotten all the information you need. But if you're the Nuggets, you're playing at home after playing pretty poorly on the road for a while. This is a game that you should win pretty handedly, because the offense of the Spurs is just not, it can have its moments, but it does not look cohesive or dangerous a lot of the time. And part of that is, in addition to exploring what Jeremy Sohan can do as sort of this point guard, you're just letting Wemby go out there. They're not necessarily using him in these specific spots. There are trends to what he's doing, but it's kind of, he's floating all over the place, getting the ball in all these different locations. They've given him the freedom to take a lot of fadeaways or step backs. And it's like, we go through this with Michael Porter Jr. a little bit, where it's, you have the size just to get your shot off over anyone. Like, you don't need to create the separation on fades or step backs. Like, just throw that bad boy up there. But he's a rookie, Wemby is. So there's going to be growing pains there. I ultimately don't think, and I counted myself as someone who thought it would pan out, Jeremy Sohan at point guard. I know we're only sub 20 games of the season. I'm out on it. You would need to surround him with, again, at least I said, one other playmaker who can work off the ball, and probably more spacing, high volume spacing, than you have around him right now.
Yeah, it's just right now Wemby looks like an inefficient version of Kevin Durant with like 5 inches to spare. But we'll see what's gonna happen to him in the next couple of years. Okay, let's take one short break, and then we'll return with some better teams, hopefully. Okay, we are back to our presentation. The next tier is called WTF ? Now, there's only one team in this tier, and it's the Houston Rockets. So they actually might be, next to the Grizzlies, but they might actually be above like the 4 teams I have in the next tier. I just have no idea what to think about them. When they signed the 2 guys with the worst true shooting percentage on volume in the league to huge contracts, I was like, WTF? What is going on? But now they're a 500 team now, right now. So which WTF is a stronger one? The one that at least I thought that they're just losing the compass, or this one where we're actually seeing some really, really good play from Ime Udoka's team?
That's a tough one. I think they're probably, what we've seen from them, they've gotten a little lucky or a lot lucky on opponent 3-point shooting. So I would expect the pullback there to come. I don't know with this team. They feel like the quintessential, like maybe 38 and 44, 40 and 42, 41 and 41, 42 and 40 team. That's where it feels like they should end up. I don't think they're going to end up in the Western Conference playoff picture. That would really surprise me. At the same time, they have the ability to get better. Jalen Green has been up and down a lot of the year. Fred VanVleet has not been shooting well inside the arc, even by his standards. I don't know how Amen Thompson's return. I don't know if I don't think he's been back yet. I haven't caught the past 2 Rockets games, but I don't think he's like, when he comes back, does that help or hurt you just because it's a rookie that is going to be subjected to a learning curve? But I do think when you watch them, there is a real consistency to, it'd be nice if they ran more on offense, but Alperen Sengun is really good. Like, he can drive that entire offense. And the minutes they've decided, hey, we're tethering Fred VanVleet and Alperen Sengun together, their minutes. And the stuff Fred VanVleet does off the dribble, even when he's not hitting his shots, defenses react. And so creates these opportunities for everyone else to move or to get open shots off of his kicks. Alperen Sengun has fantastic vision. He has a lot of sort of the physical FU game once he does get to the interior, and he's been more aggressive with that. Jabari Smith Jr., he's not scoring a ton, but like his efficiency, I think he's shooting like 38% or whatever on threes. He's been good defensively. Tari Eason, Jayshawn Tate, those are all solid defenders. Dylan Brooks, solid defender. Fred VanVleet, solid defender. And so I can see the defense actually maybe outplaying the offense as we move forward. I think the big questions for them are, does Dylan Brooks' shot selection kind of sustain? Because he's been very kept in check. And then what sort of happens when rubber meets the road of, well, if it involves, we need to play more veterans than younger guys. And I'm looking at Amen Thompson specifically here. Cam Whitmore's already not playing. Are we going to prioritize Amen Thompson's development? Or are we going to prioritize winning games? Because that could throw off a lot of your bench rotation, maybe not even your starting lineup. And so that is what I'm watching. But I do think, look, I smashed the under for this team. I think they were over under at like 31 or 32, and I hit the under without hesitation. That is something I would expect them to clear now. And I think that's a positive development because it felt for so long, in large part because of the personnel they had. They were treating Kevin Porter Jr. like a building block, apparently, behind the scenes, which is just outrageously stupid. So the fact that they kind of have like a direction, not just with their head coach, but the players that are on the floor, and you have guys who have a track record of being good defenders. When you look at Fred VanVleet, when you look at Dylan Brooks, when you look at Tari Eason, there's a base here. And I think that's exciting if you're a Rockets fan.
Yeah, 2 things about them. Dylan Brooks looks like he's still the FIBA World Cup version of himself, like shooting really, really high percentage clips. And Alperen Sengun, I think they said that he grew like 2 inches since last season. And if that's true, that's huge. That's a really, really big thing, because if you want to be good in the West, you need to be able to play against Nikola Jokic. And, if you're a 6'10" guy comparing to a 7 feet guy, that's a big difference. For instance, you have Bam Adebayo, who is a guy that has nothing on Jokic because he's 6'9", and it's really hard for a guy that's not tall enough to guard Nikola. So yeah, I'm actually quite optimistic, and I'm quite jealous of some of the young guys Houston has, comparing to the guys Denver has on its bench. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting, at least this season for them.
Yeah, they're I think they're going to be like just one of those teams that even if they don't end up very good, like they're going to be just frisky, and they're always going to be looking to win because they owe that top 4 protected pick to OKC this year.
Man, I listen to your shows way too often, because my next tier is called everybody. Actually, now that put a pinpoint on that. Frisky is actually in the next tier. So this tier is called everybody thinks they're good, but they kind of suck tier. And it's the 4th.
You had the Rockets below this tier? Wow.
Yeah, I think.
Whoa, this is a spicy tier. Oh my God.
Yeah. So we have the LA Clippers, we have the Golden State Warriors, we have the New Orleans Pelicans, and we have the Phoenix Suns. Now, I know this is a mishmash of different teams. They all look pretty bad right now, and I don't expect them to stay at the same tier until the end of this season. But first, let's see, who would you put the Rockets above from this group?
Well, yeah, the title of the tier just threw me. I think the Rockets are probably in the right place, but to say that these teams might suck just feels, and honestly, what's ironic, I mean, I guess the Clippers have a case to be in that thing. It's the Warriors. I look at the team as of this four that I'd be most concerned about, because the starting lineup, when it was at full strength, before the Draymond suspension, before the Steph injury, that quintet was getting annihilated. And that was one of the best 5-man units in basketball last year. Andrew Wiggins does not look the same. Clay, even on his good offensive nights, and he's not getting good offensive nights every single game, he's just not there on defense anymore. And I don't think, when you look at kind of the reserves, even though they've done well in the minutes without Steph Curry when CP3's running the show, you look at Moses Moody, you look at Jonathan Kuminga, and it's like, have they done enough to say, well, these guys need to close games over a Clay or an Andrew Wiggins if those two don't have it going? It's questionable, but it's also a legitimate conversation. The Warriors seem to be searching right now. Part of it's availability, but like, no one really expected Brandon Podziemski to have this role in year one, and he's had a fairly steady role lately. So they might be the team I'm most concerned about, in part because my expectations for the Clippers are just so low at this point, and they have picked up a few wins in their past 4 games, one of which came against the Rockets, but the other 2 came against the Spurs. And then you go up and you get slaughtered by the Pelicans. So I'm just, with the Suns, look, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant have not played a single second of action together. They're going to be fine. I think, look, we've even seen it. They're on a long winning streak right now. And ever since Devin Booker has come back, a lot of the problems that were haunting them, where it's, okay, well, who's going to be your second best player every night or your best ball handler? That's no longer an issue because Devin Booker's there. The attention that Kevin Durant is seeing in fourth quarters, in half court sets, he's still prime time, but it's not as many bodies because Devin Booker is there. He is, I still don't think people appreciate how good he is as like a point guard or a floor general, whatever you want to title it. This is just one of the, like, forget shooting guard, point guard. This is just one of the 5 best guards in the league right now. Like, there's Luka, there's Steph, there's Shea, and I think those are the only 3 players that you can, unless I'm just forgetting someone like really ludicrous, to say those guys are definitely better as guards than oh my God, Devin Booker. And so, like, that's huge for them. They're going to be fine. I have questions about the defense, which has started to slip. But even when Bradley Beal comes back, offense just might be so good, and you'll be so much, not less reliant, but you don't need to live and die by as many, okay, well, what is Nas Little or Keita Bates-Diop or Josh Okogie doing on offense? You can have those guys in and not need as much of a lift offensively from them. I think they're going to be really good if they stay healthy. And the team I might be highest on in this tier right now is the Pelicans, because they're playing like gangbusters. Zion, I know a lot of people have said this, there might just be something to, if he's going to miss all that time like he did last season, his ramp up just might be a little bit longer than most. He's such a unique physical specimen. He's starting to look more like himself. The minutes with him and Ingram, they were getting killed at one point. They're starting to win those. They've started to unlock different units and combinations with the way they could play. We know what was happening with the CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, plus some bench players, Jordan Hawkins, and maybe a Dyson Daniels with Jonas Valanciunas playing, or maybe you have a different body in there. When they're fully healthy, when Trey Murphy comes back, when CJ's back, they're going to be really dangerous at both ends of the floor. And, with all of these teams, I think health is probably the biggest question mark for them, where it's like, you look at, I think the Warriors and the Clippers have the most like top end. Oh, is there a question mark of how they're playing? Looking at Wiggins and Thompson, or Russell Westbrook has been so bad. And then the fit in LA, they need to figure out, they're getting killed when Russ and Harden play together, and they've gotten rid of a lot of those minutes. But is that sustainable over the long term? They're playing PJ Tucker at the 4 for stretches. Can you get enough spacing and offensive usage so that what he does on offense, which is nothing a lot of the times at this point, doesn't hurt you as much? So there's a lot of, even with the Suns, you're looking at the back end of their rotation where it's, okay, well, let's say they're fully healthy. Who are their 4th, 5th, 6th best players on any given night? The Pelicans just have more going for them if they're healthy, I think, than all of these teams, except for like the Suns probably have the strongest case after them. So I actually don't think any of these teams actually suck. If you're looking at potentially they're quintessential high ceiling, incredibly low floor teams because of the health question marks that they're dealing with. And I think that's what all of them are sort of facing. Although the Warriors, they've looked pretty bad even when they have anybody at points. So that's maybe it's time to throw the. I think it's right that they're all kind of in a tier because we have questions about, well, we haven't even seen their full groups together for a lot of the time yet when you're looking at Phoenix and LA and New Orleans specifically. So these are teams that are definitely tough to wrap heads around. I will say I'm very optimistic on the outlooks of New Orleans and Phoenix, though. Those are teams that I would be like, Phoenix, I'm still just ready to say, even if they don't have a top 4 seed, like I still think they and the Nuggets are the two best teams in the West. And New Orleans and Minnesota might belong in that tier now, but like New Orleans has the potential to enter that top 4 tier because that is their ceiling for sure.
Okay, one thing about the Pelicans is that they're missing CJ McCollum, and thanks to that, they're huge. They're really big because CJ is a kind of a small guy, and a guy you can attack, with your half-court offense. And I actually think that they might be better without him at this moment because they're just a menace to play against. Even though CJ is probably their third best player.
You are sort of touching on what has become a discussion nationally, and I think even in New Orleans circles, is should CJ McCollum come off the bench when he comes back because of how well the starting 5 has been faring right now. And it would be something that's interesting to look at. They have a lot of different things they could do when everyone's available. Just because like Trey Murphy and CJ are out, but they have Jose Alvarado, Larry Nance Jr. came back, BI came back. So they just have a lot of different bodies. And I still question whether they have enough shooting, even with Jordan Hawkins and once Matt Ryan gets healthy. At the same time, when Zion is Zion, he's just shown that spacing doesn't matter. It's no, just go through 4 or 3 dudes and get to the rim anyway. And we've seen that over the past couple games, I think. And so their ceiling's a lot higher than I think their initial. And look, they had me, I'm a Pelicans guy, but they had me like ready to deboard the bandwagon at one point this year, and I was clinging to it. So if it looks like that will pay off, they're probably the most fascinating team to me of these 4. That's for sure.
Okay, it is time for us to take another short break, and then we'll get into some teams I'm even more impressed. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back, and as I promised to you, now we get the frisky in. So the surprisingly frisky tier, and it is 3 teams. It's the Los Angeles Lakers, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Sacramento Kings. So I'm a hater, and I thought the Lakers and the Mavs would be much worse than what they are. I'm also a famous De'Aaron Fox doubter, and I thought the Thunder should still be at least a year away at this stage. Oh, I forgot to put the Thunder on this graphic as well. So that's the 4th team actually here. So tell me, are you surprised that the Lakers have been pretty good so far, and the Mavs as well?
The Mavs definitely were better than I expected. They have the same issues that we all expected, but the emergence of Derek Lively basically from day one has been a big deal for them. Luka is right front and center in the MVP conversation. They're winning both, which I think has been critical, both their solo star minutes when it's Luka without Kyrie or Kyrie without Luka. So I thought there'd be more issues with their defense there, but they have enough offense to where you can steal stretches with Derek Jones Jr. playing. The Lakers, they haven't been great, but they've dealt with so many injuries. And like Austin Reeves was so bad to start the year. He's been a lot better since they came off he's been coming off the bench. So I don't think that they're surprising me too much. And I would probably I would have the Pelicans and the Suns above both of these teams right now. Because I think that they have more weaknesses, whereas the Lakers half-court offense can still be iffy when you're looking at late-game situations too. They're so reliant on age 39 season LeBron James that it's uncomfortable. He's incredible, but it's just uncomfortable that dependence. But I have more, I think because I trust LeBron, I just have inherently more trust in the Lakers being a threat this year than the Mavericks. And I think the Lakers might be both of these are teams where you could say, all right, they might try and make a trade. They can only each trade one first-round pick, up to one first-round pick this year, and they might be emboldened to do it just because the timelines they're operating on. So I'm definitely more surprised by the Mavs. I also think what they're doing or their place in the West feels way more fragile than Los Angeles is if we're assuming health for both. The Kings have not surprised me. I guess they didn't get off to the best start. I'm not a De'Aaron Fox doubter. I've actually historically been way too high on him, but he's starting to make me look a little bit smarter these past couple of years. They've been grittier on defense, I think, than a lot of the numbers are going to indicate. They are they're 12th in points allowed per possession. Oh, that's over their last 7 games. But like they have a defensive switch, and they're a team. They've got trade assets. Like if an OG Anunoby becomes available, or if a Mikal Bridges becomes available, or if it's just another, you need defensive help on the wing to plug into those 3-4 spots to maybe replace some of the Harrison Barnes minutes. They're closer to the tippy top of the West than not for me. And so they just haven't surprised me. If anything, they've underachieved a little bit. And a lot of that, I think, is just maybe people didn't realize how important De'Aaron Fox was, because when he was out for a little bit with that, I think it was the sprained ankle, they did not look great. And then the Thunder, they're surprising in the sense that Sam Presti comes into the season preaching, we borrowed wins from the future. This is not the year to go on a star trade. Like, we're fully prepared to experiment, and this is still kind of rebuild. That's the messaging coming out. And then they're just hovering around the top of the West. They have a top 10 offense and defense at the moment. They're basically top 7 offense and defense. Everyone has basically improved with the exception of a couple guys. Cason Wallace has been great. Isaiah Joe's been great. Chet Holmgren is the rookie of the year right now. So, and Shea remains Shea. Shea might be the MVP. I mean, when you look at the early season MVP candidates, there is Shea, there's Jokic, there is Luka probably belongs there, and there's Tatum, and then, Steph was at that level, but then he missed time. Did that actually help his case? Because the Warriors still aren't, built to operate too long without him, even though they're losing a lot of the minutes with him now. So there's noisy there, but those feel like the top 4 right now. Maybe Embiid belongs in there, but Jokic, Luka, Shea, and who did I mention that I already forgot? Tatum. Yeah. Those feel like the 4 guys. OKC's just like ready. I don't even know if they need to make a trade. We know the Josh Giddey allegations for the inappropriate relationship with an underage girl. That's certainly harrowing. They've no commented that basically he is playing as of now. We'll have to see what that bears. He's not even been that good this season for them. He's perked up a little bit lately. So, and that whatever happens with that investigation is way more important than the honest to God basketball that's happening on the court. But like, even you just look at the makeup on this team, looking at the floor, they're doing things, and I think people are going to want them to make a trade this year if everyone's available. And the thing is that as of right now, they're still experimenting with their rotation. If they just wanted to tighten it, they might not need to make a move. It might just be, no, we're going to tighten up these minutes, this rotation a little bit when it matters. So honestly, of the tier that you just laid out, there is a chance. I would still put the Kings as the top team of those 4. There's a chance it's Oklahoma City. It feels like the Kings might have a slightly higher ceiling at this point, only because you could see the Thunder kind of all of a sudden pivoting to, well, no, like we're playing Cason Wallace and Ousmane Dieng a bunch of minutes here. And we're going to see Micic get even more time too as the season goes on, because that's what they want. Maybe they don't do that. Again, they're so good that at some point you can't justify experimenting unless you're still winning at this clip. But those are the 2 teams. I think OKC and Sacramento are to me, clearly the best 2 teams from this tier.
And what's interesting to me is that Presti's talk about them borrowing the wins from the future. Is it fair to Shea? I mean, Shea is so good. Like, why wouldn't you want to put an amplification on this season and just try to be awesome this year?
Yeah, I mean, because right now they're awesome while experimenting, and so it's all good vibes. It comes to, let's fast forward a month. They're going to hit a rough patch. Every team hits a rough patch. How do they react to that? And my guess is they'll do nothing. Like, maybe they make a trade where they're folding Davis Bertans' salary into a different salary they can move over the summer. It also matters who comes on the trade market? They're going to want someone who's under contract, fits with the timeline. And that's like a lot of people like, well, Pascal Siakam would be great here. Zach LaVine would be great here. And it's like, that doesn't really fit. Well, the Siakam idea is semi-interesting, but he's going to be a free agent. And OKC's not. I just don't think they're going to mess around with that. And if you're winning at this clip, you almost can't. It's not that you can't justify making a bigger trade, but who are you getting rid of then? Like, you can get rid of all the future picks and I guess Davis Bertans' salary. And so if you're just tacking on to this core, but then it gets an issue of, oh, well, where are those minutes? Like, who are we pulling minutes away from? And I think a lot of people, and this is independent of the allegations against him, they're going to say Josh Giddey. They're not wrong because like his fit is weird. And he's needed to be on the court with Shea this year. Otherwise the Thunder have been really bad. And so that's the spot to kind of monitor. But I think, and again, this is all further muddied because of the allegations against him. I do see people in the chat saying 16 is fine in Oklahoma. It doesn't look like this person lived in Oklahoma. They were in California. And so like that's, and just the fact that he's in the NBA, he's an adult, and like this is someone who's in high school. Like that's just, it's skeevy. And again, we need to let the actual investigation play out because these are not even allegations coming from the person themselves. They're coming from social media sleuths. And so I hate the whole situation. I hate just because they're doxing the girl that's involved. It just makes me wildly sad and uncomfortable. But he's the guy. There's no natural segue back to basketball. What a terrible conversation I'm having with myself. Like he's the guy to just watch. And I just don't think that's a decision they would make until this offseason. And again, if he is suspended or something, that opens up a whole other can of worms. But this team they said they were going to be patient and we're almost prepping fans for a rough season. Now they've come out and they've been patient and they're just winning a crap ton. And so I wouldn't expect them to make any real changes.
Yeah, and it's not a nice thing to ask, but considering all of what you just said and the fact that Giddey and Shea are not really a perfect fit next to each other as your leading guards, do you think maybe it's the time to try to break them up?
To trade Giddey? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I guess Giddey, not Shea. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably too early because look, the minutes with them on the floor together this season have been really good, but there's a lot of like, well, the Thunder are still working. Chet has opened up the floor for both of them, but there's a lot of Shea's able to work in tight spaces. And the bigger question to me is actually, can Giddey operate independent of Shea because of the attention Shea draws? And defenses just don't treat him like a threat. It's like, even when he's on the court alone, they're going to go so far under him and test the jumper, test the floater. And it's not always like working out for him. And so that's the thing to monitor. And the Thunder have not shown, unless it's changed over the past few games, a ton of confidence in the Giddey without Shea minutes. They've been more inclined to go, okay, Jalen Williams, J-Dub, he will play without Shea and Giddey more than Giddey will play without Shea and J-Dub. And that's just, Giddey's going to be in line for a pretty big payday, assuming he finishes the season, yada, yada, yada. So would I consider it? Depending on who becomes available, I would absolutely consider it. But it has to be the right player. And I ultimately don't think that player, because the Thunder, I think, are going to want someone who skews younger. I don't think that player will be available before the summer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And now I'm going to show you my last tier for today. And again, this has nothing to do with Dan. This is just the way I'm looking at the West right now. The tier is called Not Perfect, but Pretty Damn Good When They Want to Be tier. And it's two teams. It's the NBA champions Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves.
So,
now, we'll talk about the Nuggets more in the final segment. But before that, just tell me what do you see about the team that has actually impressed me the most out West this season?
Yeah, they have to be the single biggest surprise. Even as someone who is a Timberwolves optimist, I did not anticipate this. Man, things I'm seeing. Anthony Edwards has just made the leap to this two-way star more consistently. Rudy Gobert looks so different. There was a play, I can't remember what podcast I was listening to that was outlining it. His defensive player of the year case, though, can be boiled down to a possession. He's covering on the perimeter, somehow has the mobility to get back to contest a closeout or close out in the corner. He wasn't moving like that last year, and that's been huge for them. Naz Reid might be the sixth man of the year. There's a lot of good candidates this year. I think Lonnie Walker and Karis LeVert are kind of your more traditional ones, but you have Naz Reid there. He's been really good. Who else has been really good this year off the bench? I mean, it's just we're so early, it doesn't matter. Like Alex Caruso might get some love there for sure, and would certainly deserve to be. But like, so you have that, the Naz Reid, and then Karl-Anthony Towns has been a lot better defensively. He's been inconsistent offensively. I'd still like to see him take more threes. But like when you look at the top 8 of this roster, because you can trust Kyle Anderson playing, Nickeil Alexander-Walker playing, Naz Reid playing, they might have the best top 8 rotation in basketball. You look at the Nuggets at full strength and the Celtics at full strength, and you say, okay, they clearly have the best top 6. But like once you start to get beyond that, the Pelicans, if they're fully healthy, we just don't see it enough. OKC, a team we just talked about, when top to bottom, like, yes, I think the Pelicans, the Thunder are deeper. Other teams are deeper when you're looking at 1 to 15. But if you're looking at just strictly playoff rotations, Minnesota right now might have the deepest, again, just top 1 through 8. When you're shortening it to 7 or 8 guys, they might have the most bankable playoff rotation in the league, which is no one was predicting that coming into the season. And so just combined with the better play from Rudy, having Towns being healthy to at least open up the floor on offense, Anthony Edwards making the leap, Naz Reid making another leap. I think we've seen so much from him defensively. His rim protection has improved and he remains switchable. There were times where he was compared to Zeke Naji at one point, and Zeke Naji has never developed into someone who can actually be a true blue rim protector. Naz Reid can be that in addition to his mobility on the perimeter. And this team is just, it's a frenetic watch, even when they're not playing super fast. And so much about what they've done has impressed me. But I think if we boil it down to the 3 biggest factors, I honestly think it's depth. So just the 1 through 8 guys, they're all available. Edwards making another leap. And then I think, look, Rudy Gobert has been their second best player. It's probably not even close. Look, there's a chance that Naz Reid has been their 3rd best player, which is kind of wild to say. And then Mike Conley's just there and solid. It's just incredible. So as long as they're healthy, I would still be inclined to put the Nuggets in a tier of their own right now, because we know this team. We know their faults and flaws, but we know what their top end outcome looks. As of right now, though, you are absolutely correct. No other team has justified being in the Nuggets' tier more than the Timberwolves.
And what's interesting to me is that Cat and Rudy Gobert actually look pretty good together. Unlike last season, of course, the sample was not very big last season because of Cat's injuries. But what I found interesting is that their defense with only Gobert on the court is just amazing. It's like unpenetrable, if that's a word. And then they're also pretty good on defense when they only have Cat and not Gobert. They're strangely bad on defense. Maybe not strangely, but they're worse on defense when they have both of those guys. But their offense, for some reason, is off the charts. I mean, comparing to what other things they have in their fold.
Yeah, I think without knowing like the actual lineups that have been run, my guess would be like those two are playing so many minutes next to Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, that the offense is guaranteed to be better in that. And then Towns just being a better offensive player. I think when you look at them defensively, though, they have the luxury of covering up for Cat better than any Timberwolves team in recent memory. Because now Rudy Gobert, we've just ad nauseum talked about his mobility this year. Naz Reid has been able to cover up for a lot in the Towns and minutes that he and him play together. And then Towns has just been better defensively in terms of being in the right spots. I still think he can be just sloth paced and get caught off guard and be at these weird angles when he's in space, and teams will still continue to attack him. But because it's not just Naz, like when Jaden McDaniels is healthy and you have Kyle Anderson to pair with him and Anthony Edwards, and then just knowing that you can count on Mike Conley, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been great defensively for them as well. There's so much defensive talent surrounding him that I think they've been able to insulate Karl-Anthony Towns better than they ever really could have hoped for when they first made the Rudy Gobert acquisition.
They always looked like a Nuggets killers. And now when you see that they're actually very good against other teams as well, they might be really scary this season.
And I didn't catch the game that the Nuggets and Timberwolves played earlier this year, but people were telling me that the stuff that works, and it makes some sense, but it's you have Rudy Gobert playing down low, and Karl-Anthony Towns is going to be the guy that's like guarding Jokic. And it just works. I don't know if it's a size and strength thing, or if it's just the idea of like Rudy Gobert not having to be tethered and taken away from the basket, because that's what Jokic could do. I'm interested to see if it would hold up over the course of a series. If these two, like one game in the regular season, sure. But like I think that the Nuggets could do some interesting tactical things to make those moves difficult on Minnesota. And my gut still says that if these two teams got in a series, Cat would be exposed by the end of it. And again, that's probably on Denver being healthy, but the off-ball movement that Denver can generate, specifically inside the arc, that can hurt Cat. And I know Rudy Gobert being off Jokic kind of can derail some of that movement, but I think I do think over the course of a series that it's kind of quaint to see over a game or two, but over the course of a playoff series, I think Denver would really bust through that model and force Minnesota into some compromising decisions.
I actually agree, and I think it's a big luxury to have Naz Reid in that kind of situation, and you also have Jaden McDaniels and Na as the guys to guard Jamal Murray. So I think that would be an extremely interesting matchup for sure. Okay, let's take one last short break, and then we'll move on to the NBA champions, Denver Nuggets. Okay, we are back. So the Nuggets lost Jamal Murray to hamstring injury, and at first it looked like they would be fine with Reggie Jackson filling in the starting lineup really well. But then that opened some problems with the back end of the rotation, so their record without Jamal is now 4-5. They actually won that game when Jamal mid-game got injured. So I already said it. I'm envious of some other teams and the guys they have on the bench against the Nuggets. What's your overarching take on the Nuggets season so far? And am I right to still have them in this top tier of the conference, even with those losses that have been piling up lately?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to panic about this team. They are a machine. The overarching issues, as you call them, they're exactly not just what we expected, but they're exactly what they're supposed to be. They made this conscious decision to say, like, we have our top 6 guys, and like the bench is still going to be a bunch of question marks because 1, they didn't have the resources to really do anything else financially. And then 2, they tried to take some swings, developmental swings. And so there are going to be growing pains there. There is value in getting this information and these reps in the regular season to maybe identify, because you have your 6 and you've decided, look, if it's different, if like, I'm honestly, and I don't mean to, how I feel about Michael Porter Jr., but if like Michael Porter Jr. is missing time, or if Christian Brown is missing time, you can overcome that. If Jokic, if Murray, if Gordon, even KCP, when you look at his defensive assignments, like you've kind of just decided that if one of those 4 players aren't healthy, you're not winning the championship. And so that's the decision that you have made, let's say. And I think that's a semi-comfortable decision to make. I think what makes this really uneasy is, okay, well, can we even get to like a 6 or 7 man playoff rotation that we feel super confident in? The front court rotation after Jokic and Gordon and Porter Jr. is just all over the place right now. I've been a little bit concerned with how Christian Brown has played. He needs Nikola Jokic to get anything going inside the arc for him. And so it's fair to be concerned about that, but this is all happening in the backdrop of they don't have Jamal Murray. And Matt Moore was talking about this recently on the Locked On Nuggets podcast. Like, Reggie Jackson's been good for a lot of the year, but now all of a sudden he's going up against not just league guards, but league guards who are then defending him because they're not going to defend. This is what Matt Moore pointed out. Anyone else, because Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. and Jokic are too effing big. And you're not going to throw them on KCP because that feels like a little bit of a waste, just he's not doing as much on the ball. So I do think they need at least another veteran in this rotation, because it's Christian Brown has earned the benefit of the doubt. But if you're waiting for a Julian Strawther or, the Zeke Naji ship seems like it's sailed. Every year is the Zeke Naji year, and then every year it's not the Zeke Naji year. But if you're counting on Peyton Watson, like those are where you're getting into risky areas of, well, are these guys going to be good enough when it matters most? And that's the question they have. I don't know what they're going to be able to do at the trade deadline, in part because, yeah, they have some, I think there'd be a lot of teams that'd be like, oh, if you're willing to trade Peyton Watson, we will definitely take a look at him. but they need to get to matching salary to do anything of consequence. And it's like, okay, Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon, KCP are your 5 highest paid players. Your 6th highest paid player is Reggie Jackson making $5 million. And it's just like, when in terms of salary matching, like, it gets really difficult to figure out moves that they can make. I know a lot of fans have been enamored with Alex Caruso, but like, one, you could get to the money for him. You could step out of your way there. The Bulls aren't taking your best offer because you can't trade them. Like, they're going to get a first for Alex Caruso. And so you're looking at someone who's, maybe you could get a Javon Carter from Chicago if they decide, or an Ayo Dosunmu, just someone who could come in and play sort of a similar defensive role. And Javon Carter he'll hit threes, man. I would love him in Denver, actually, to be honest with you. So does that type of move stabilize them at all? But the reason I can't be concerned is because they knew the risks and what was going to happen coming in. Look, we can get bent out of shape about, it'd be nice if Michael Porter Jr. would just fire up more streamlined jump shots at times, or it'd be nice if Aaron Gordon could find the basket at all right now. Those things are going to be fine. It's, if you believe that Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic are going to be healthy, and I would say, I think Aaron Gordon's probably their 3rd most important player when you look at the playoffs specifically. So if you believe those 3 guys are going to be healthy, you will have a chance. And it's, can we carve out another spot or 2 in the rotation that isn't so unpredictable? I think for them to get to a point where they have 7 guys who they can trust in the playoffs, they're going to need to get lucky on the trade and or buyout market, though. And that's just where I'm at with this team. I think what we saw at the beginning of the season when they were healthy, their defensive ceiling might be even higher than last year. And a large part of that is, one, KCP's been incredible this year. Nikola Jokic, when they were at full strength, he was doing some pretty incredible things defensively. And then, I've hammered this home. The Michael Porter Jr. defensive experience, it can still be touch and go, but the highs are so incredibly high and they are more sustainable than they've been. I can't bring myself to panic. We can nitpick. We can be concerned. For me, there's no reason to panic.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason why Michael Porter is so important to this team, next to his length, which helps the whole team grow crazy long, is the fact that he is such a perfect pairing next to Aaron Gordon, because Aaron Gordon is just the most important guy on that defense, and he is, he's not a confident shooter. He can hit some shots, but then he can go 0 for 12.
He will miss some shots.
He will miss some shots as well. So you really need Michael Porter to stretch that court out so that Aaron Gordon would have the space to operate in the dunker spot and stuff like that. And KCP is a as close to a knockdown shooter and a good defender as you'll find in the league. Jamal Murray is there. One thing that concerns me a bit is the fact that we're talking about some veteran help that might come, or maybe not even veteran help, but just some other guys to be able to join the bench of the Denver Nuggets. And the thing is, in the last 6-7 years, we've seen a plethora of players that were trying to play good minutes without Nikola Jokic on the court, and none of them made it. None of them. So it might not be just the players that have been involved. It might be something that has to do a bit with the coaching as well, because we know Nikola Jokic minutes are always overwhelmingly good, but you need that balance with his off minutes. He played for effing 42 minutes last night in Houston, and they still lost the game.
And it's like, I know he's an Iron Man, but you don't want to overwork him too much in the regular season either. At this point, it's just like, it'd be nice if he could get the break rather than Jamal Murray, but they just can't. Look, even with Jamal Murray, they're just not built to operate without Jokic still. And I know people talk a lot about, like, can't they run some different substitution patterns? And it's sure, but when you start to go through like the data of how just even the players you might want to see without Jokic more, and it's okay, like, they're just so not efficient with Jokic, like, off the court, where it's Reggie Jackson, and he was playing a bunch with Jokic off the court, an effective field goal percentage of 48 when Jokic isn't on the floor this year. Aaron Gordon's effective field goal percentage without Jokic, 37. That is incredibly low. Jamal Murray's effective field goal percentage without Jokic this year, 37.5. I think the one thing you could try, and I just don't know, like, Michael Porter Jr. might be built to play some more solo minutes. He's just not as a scorer. Sure. As a facilitator, it's okay. No, but he has a 59 effective field goal percentage without Jokic on the court, which is really good. And so could you just try and build more punchier units where, okay, Jokic is off the court and you're going to like have Michael Porter Jr. scoring to lean on? You need guys who can provide not even net positive minutes for your team, but net positive play as an individual without Jokic. And there are so few guys on this team who can do that, even within the starting lineup. I would argue that there are two guys on this team that could feasibly be as individuals. I don't even know what it would look like for the larger impact on the team. And well, actually we do. Like we've seen the Murray without Jokic minutes and they're not spectacular, but he's one of the guys. And then it's MPJ. And so it's like to not have, to not have another option with that. And I think the biggest need you could say is they need someone to be like the idea of Christian Brown and Bruce Brown together is what they need. And you're just not going to find that with the tools that they have. And even if Peyton Watson pops all of a sudden and stays that way, what is that actually doing for you in the he's not a creator. And so it's like, do we need Jalen Pickett? Like, is that the one you're looking at? Because his minutes are, they're going to dissipate when you have Jamal Murray and Reggie Jackson. So like, it feels like they're not one player short of winning a title, but it feels like they're one player short of like, we can breathe during the non-Jokic minutes at least. And I know at the beginning of the season, it was like, oh, the non-Jokic minutes look better. That kind of faded quickly. Even before the Jamal Murray minutes, they were outscored by 15 total points without Jokic on the court. That's a doable margin. Now that thing is ballooned over their most recent stretch to like, I don't even know. I think they've been outscored by like 70 points without Jokic on the court during this like recent road, disaster, whatever you want to call it. So like, I don't want to say it's unsolvable, but with the resources they have at their disposal, it's kind of this active decision that they've made. And they've been outscored by 29 points without Jokic on the court in 104 minutes. So that's not great. And during this 7-game stretch too, the starting lineup has been outscored by 30 points. So like the starting lineup with Reggie Jackson. So if you're not going to decidedly win, you'll win the minutes with Jokic overall. But if you can't win the minutes in the lineup that he is going to spend the most time in, I don't know if you cuss on this podcast, so you're screwed. So I won't drop the F-bomb. It's just like, again, this is a problem that you understand it because of how they allocated resources to their top guys. I mean, they just won a title by doing that. So it's hard to refute, but there's a trade-off there and we're witnessing it. And it's part of the reason I'm concerned, but I also can't get up in arms about it because it was an active decision. And for some reason that makes me feel a little better about it, even though that might be illogical.
Yeah, I think that most of the well-informed Nuggets fans will tell you that they're prepared for some frustrating regular season, but we know what is the prize in sight, and they probably need 8 guys for the playoffs. You can survive with 7.
7, yeah, they did 7 last year, I would say, right? Unless you count, Jeff Green. The data was terrible, but
Christian Brown was the 8th guy actually last year, and he played some really, really good minutes in the finals. But what I want to say is, you can do with 7, but one of the guys off the bench has to be a big. You cannot play just guards off the bench. And if Zeke Naji is your best big, that doesn't sound promising. So this is the thing I'm looking most towards in the next months for the Nuggets basketball. And I think that extension he got is quite strange right now because, he's not that easy to trade because of it.
I think, well, yeah, but it's not too hard because it's so cheap. So like the poison pill provision doesn't mean as much. It's felt more like a future move where it's, we want this, whatever he's locked into next year is going to be 8.8 million. Like that's a nice salary matching tool on a very low stakes contract that's declining on a player who's he's not even 23 as we're recording this.
Yep.
So that's what the logic there felt like. I actually had a question for you though, because you mentioned one of the players on the bench has to be a big. Now I just mentioned how important it is for Aaron Gordon offensively to play with Nikola Jokic. What do you sort of make of the idea? And they've killed during these minutes. It hasn't been a ton. Like Aaron Gordon at center, it kind of works. Like, would you in the playoffs specifically? I think you have to be open to it now. But is that something you could see them trying out a little bit more frequently, or they don't want to put that wear and tear on AG because of how important he is defensively to the Jokic lineups.
Oh, they have been trying it already several times.
They're
they
killing
haven't
people when they do it too.
Yeah, they haven't tried it last season almost at all during the regular season. Then they were killing people in the playoffs with that. But the thing here is that Michael Malone was actually panicking a bit, and this is why he's okay. No more Zeke Nagy tonight. We'll just play Aaron at the 5, and we'll hopefully survive that. We still had, Jeff Green, who is a beefy guy. I mean, he was a pretty much net negative most of the playoffs, even, and not to mention the regular season. But Michael Malone still felt that he needed some more beef in the paint when Jokic would go out of the court.
You know, and Jeff Green had Jeff Green is like the king of having moments that make you think he's still really good, and then you go back and you watch other moments, or you'll see the data, and it's like, oh, like no. And what's also tough is because Nikola Jokic is your best player, and he's gonna play. I don't want him playing 42 minutes in November. I will take him playing 42 minutes in May. What are you supposed to allocate to someone who, when it matters most, in theory, is going to play 6 or 8 minutes a game? And that's where it gets challenging. And so it's, maybe they could have done a better job, like signing a minimum. Like, I'll go this route. Bismack Biyombo would have done infinitely more for this team on the court than DeAndre Jordan is ever going to do for them. And so you could have saying, but you talk to all these people around the NBA, and I think the emotional component of having DJ there, like, that's going to matter to them. So can you find a really cheap big on the trade market? Because when they're making minimums or close to it, now that becomes more workable. And that, in theory, is something you could address because, hey, that shouldn't cost too much. And we don't need this guy to be a star. We need him to play 8 to 10 minutes a game during the playoffs at most. And so it's I know some people have floated Andre Drummond. I have no desire to see Andre Drummond on this team. I'm not going to lie. I just don't love, I don't think it's going to be good. I don't think it would be good. But I see someone in the chat get Boogie back. I don't really know if no, I'm good without that. But this isn't because the way they run their offense, but a Jericho Sims from New York, who's not getting minutes. I mean, you're not going to trade for Hartenstein. They're using him too much. Could they be a team? I didn't think of trade targets before I got here, but you can get a super cheap big for the most part. And that's at least okay. That feels feasibly addressable. But where a lot of this, if you want a better creator off the bench or a better wing off the bench, those players traditionally cost a lot more. And so that's just where you get into some really interesting and tough discussions. But if I'm them, I would be with you if you're to minimize how long you need to play Aaron Gordon at center. I mean, look, you might not need another big man in the playoffs because Aaron Gordon at center for 6 to 8 minutes a game could make a lot of sense and minimal issues. But otherwise, maybe they get, like I said, the buyout market, or can you trade for just someone who is so cheap right now that it costs seconds or something, and then just you have to send out the requisite salary match just to get a body in there. And that's it. Again, that's at least something that they might be able to address.
Okay, then thank you so much for letting me force you to speak about the Nuggets longer than you usually does. Do you want to promote something before we go out?
Just check out the Hardwood Knocks podcast. I'm sure it's all Nuggets fans that are here, but we cover the NBA at large, and we have a lot of fun, and we do a really good job with it. So Hardwood Knocks, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast, just search the name Hardwood Knocks, spelled exactly as it sounds.
Thank you very much. And before we meet again next week, my dear listener, idemo Nuggetsi.